Good morning, and thank you all for joining us. So our event today is focusing on putting Vedanta into practice in different parts of our lives. The day will be broken up into 2 sessions, which will be followed by 45 minutes of questions and answers. Each speaker will have 15 minutes for their talk, and I will ring this bell at the 2-minute mark. We have paper and a few pens for writing questions in the back by the screen, and once you've written the questions down, please put them into the little basket. And if you have questions online, please type them in either comments or in the chat, depending on what platform you're using. So without further ado, we will begin the morning session dealing with the external world with Pravrajika Vrajaprana.
Oh my God, mask life. Good morning, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate your being here in the temple with us. We really appreciate you joining remotely. It's a great day for us. It's a great day to all be together. So, in lieu of a Sanskrit chant, I'll conclude with that. Let's just start into our topic since we have 15 minutes. And I'm leading off our topics today with a discussion of the topic of the pandemic and environmental concerns. As you all are aware, in an astonishingly short time, we've gone from a fairly non-scary external environment to the point where it seems like the world is literally just falling around our ears. The eastern part of the United States is literally, not metaphorically, drowning. In Louisiana, in New York, New Jersey, Mississippi, it's bad. There's catastrophic flooding, there has been, in this year, not too long ago, in Germany, in Belgium, China, and the West Coast of the United States, top to bottom, is on fire, either literally or metaphorically. Hottest temperatures ever recorded, and you know what? Not gonna get better. We're just trying to get it stop it from just getting worse. You know, it seems like all of a sudden Chicken Little is telling the truth. It's like, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. It's like, okay, this time Chicken Little isn't lying. Yeah, it just kind of seems like that. And the pandemic is still going on. We thought it was over. Whew. It's still raging, you know? Ain't that Maya for you? But you know what? We can't just dust off our hands and say, oh, it's Maya. When in our heart of hearts, we believe we are the body, we believe we're the mind, we believe there is a real world out there, we believe that our relationships are true and real. So we can't just cherry pick our Maya. We have to, as long as we believe this is real and this is real, we have to believe that the natural world is also real. Those who want to just call it Maya that means like, I can't deal with this. I can't. So, is there a common denominator between the pandemic and the environmental destruction that we're seeing right now? Well, yeah, I mean, apart from the fact it's a big bummer, yeah, it's human hubris. It's our ego. We have this outsized belief as human beings about where we stand in the cosmos and where we stand in the universe and where we stand in relation to everything else on the planet. As far as the pandemic, you know what? Get over it. We've had pandemics since the beginning of time. We will have them until the end of time. They're cyclic, they will happen. The only solution is to vaccinate, wear a mask. We have above all to remember, it's not all about us. We have a responsibility to other people because we're not just individuals, we are societies, we are friends. If we believe in the oneness of all, we believe that we have to protect the health and well-being of other people. So whether we want, we can't really go squawking about we need the freedom to wear a mask or not. We need to have the responsibility of taking care of our other fellow beings on the planet. This whole thing with the vaccination revealed so much of this American individuality, which is another way of saying ego. Ego, me first, me first. Move out of my way, me first. But we human beings are very, very recent additions to this planet. The human beings have only been on this planet a pathetic 350,000 years, which is like the blink of an eye as far as the Earth. Trees have been here 420 million years. Do you know there's some aspen groves in Colorado and Utah that are standing? They're 80,000 years old. Trees have been here 420. Sponges have been here for 700 million years, not 350,000. Human beings are in their infancy in the planet, and we're acting like typical spoiled brat kids. We want our toys, and we want to keep them to ourselves. But we have to learn to share. We have to share the planet. We have to share our resources. So Hubert Reeves, a Canadian-French astrophysicist, said, "Man is the most insane species. He worships an invisible God and destroys a visible nature, unaware that this visible nature that he's destroying is this very God that he's worshiping." But as our friend Casey pointed out, he said it should be amended to say, recent humanity is unaware. Because, as he pointed out, indigenous people treated nature with reverence. And I want to say, but wait, Case, let's talk Hindu scriptures. It isn't just indigenous cultures. The Atharva Veda said, "Earth is my mother, and I am her child." The Hindu tradition says, Earth isn't a big bucket for us to go plunder. The Earth is quite literally our mother. She is Bhumi. She's a goddess. Her daughter is Sita. She is literally a goddess. Our body is composed of these elements that comprise everything else on the planet. And when this body goes, it goes back to those elements. And it's all divine. There's nothing but Brahman. Everything we see, everything we don't see. The wildlife biologist Doug Chapman said, "Being one with nature sounds like an aspiration." It really isn't, because we already are. We are already one with nature, which is why it feels so good to be out with it. The Chandogya Upanishad says, "Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma," all this is indeed Brahman. All this that we see, that we experience, that we feel, that we don't see, that we don't experience, that is indeed Brahman. It is all divine. Even the pandemic, even the burning, even the drowning. Now, does this mean it's all hunky-dory now, just get over it, that's, it's all divine? No, because we're not in balance. We are not in balance with the deepest part of ourselves, and we're not in balance with anything else either, because if one is off kilter, the other is off kilter too. The Hindu tradition, more than any other tradition on the planet, emphasizes the oneness of existence. Swami Vivekananda said, "You are all one with the universe. Happiness belongs to them who know that they are one with this universe." Now, this oneness is borne out in physics and in biology. The physicist Schrödinger, who got the Nobel Prize, Ernst Schrödinger, said, "Quantum physics reveals a basic oneness of the universe." Biology tells us that we are connected to every other being on the planet in ways that we may sense, but we don't really know or we don't understand. For example, we share 84% of our genes with dogs and 85% with mice. We share somewhere, it gets better. We share 80 to 90% of our genes with grizzly bears, who are alarmingly just like us, apart from the hair. They are smart, they are playful, they're very creative, they're dexterous with their hands, as anyone in this neighborhood will tell you. They show the ability to deliberate, making their choices, and they postpone gratification when they know a better thing is coming around the corner. We share 99% of our genetic material with chimpanzees, 99%, which would make us think twice before we believe in experimenting with them. And we are 4/5 a genetic match with blue whales and bats. Bats. So even literally on a physical plane, we live in all other beings, in algae, in toads, in beetles. We live, the same material exists through all of us. Plants and trees are not inert objects. They are sentient beings. Plants and trees process information in almost identical ways as animals do. They just do it really slowly. Trees are extremely sophisticated organisms that live in families. They support their and take care of their neighbors. They give them food, send support their way, and they fight off predators when plants experience pain, and they react to it. And they talk to other plants through the root system and through hormones through the air, communicating the presence of danger, warning others. So we may ask ourselves, okay, well, why do I feel so much better when I'm in nature? Now, my suspicion is that we either actively or subliminally are aware of this oneness with all beings, this oneness with nature. So let's say we're at work, and for lunch we decide, I'm going to go out to that park. I'm just going to go for a walk in the park and sit and eat my lunch there. Now, we may begin our walk with stressing over work problems, or stressing over family problems, or just stressing over ourselves or our weight. So within yards of getting into that park, we just start feeling better. We don't know why, but we do. Our heart rate slows, and our heart rate becomes more steady. The blood pressure goes down. We get more relaxed because our cortisol level and our adrenaline level drop. Our stress hormones, they drop. Our immune system, even if we're just sitting in a park, it builds up. Our NK cells, which fight off tumors, which fight off bacteria, viruses, inflammation, those go up just by being in a natural environment. Cytokines, again, those are proteins which lead to chronic inflammation, which cause, diabetes, heart disease, even depression. Those, when we go into a park, those proteins drop by just better if we walk because we get more air in, just sitting in that environment. That's why doctors today, a number of doctors actually prescribe on a sheet, nature time. I'm ordering you as your doctor to spend 5 hours a week in nature. In Japan and Korea, doctors ask people to go forest bathing, and it's actually paid for by their insurance. Now, it works if an insurance company will deal with it. So many of us have to deal in an environment where we're on computer for hours at a time, where we have to be in a car and driving for hours at a time. And we're stuck with this toxic noise, whether it's of being with other cars or being around leaf blowers, God help us, and we're sirens, and we're breathing in pollutants and smoke and all these chemicals. And what happens to that is our autonomic nervous system gets amped by that, which is our most ancient system we have. And so what happens is all of our stressors go up. So what happens is that our body goes into this fight or flight thing, this constant stressor with the fight or flight, because it's hard on us, hard on the body, hard on the mind, and believe me, it's hard on the environment. We're not adapted to being out of a natural environment. We feel good in nature because the human existence on this planet has been so short. 99.9% of human existence on the planet was in a natural environment. 0.1% of the time we started going into an urban environment. We are not adapted to it. It feels out of balance because we're out of balance. So living out of balance makes us feel unhappy. It doesn't feel right, which when we're out of balance spiritually, physically, this helps, it just causes this whole chain reaction, which brings us to the Vedic concept of Rita. a Vedic concept which is so applicable now. This is natural ordering principle of balance and harmony. It's the natural ordering of the universe. The word dharma comes from Rita. And a good example of this natural harmony is in the Vrajaprana Upanishad. This earth, it says, this earth is honey for all beings, and all beings are honey for this earth. The intelligent, immortal being, the soul of this earth, and the intelligent, immortal being, the soul, and the individual being, each is honey for the other. Brahman is the soul of each. He is indeed the self in all. He is all. So we see this mutually sustaining relationship, all tied in by the ideal of the oneness of all life. Now, when we don't mutually sustain each other, Rita goes right out the window and our existence goes south very quickly, as we can see all the signs of it right now. You know, in Vedanta, we have this grand ideal of the oneness of all life, but as human beings, we're really capable of believing in one thing and doing the other. We do it all the time. We divorce our beliefs from our daily activities. No laws can force us to follow our own ideals. And that really is the focus of today, what we're talking about today, this daily application of Vedanta to our life. So in India, when devout Hindus wake up, before they put their feet on the ground, they ask for Mother Earth's forgiveness. Mother, please forgive me. You are the mother of us all. You are the sacred. Forgive me for putting my weight on your body. So how would we apply that in today's context? Not only, our physical girth, but what about our footprint? What about our ecological footprint? That is our lasting footprint. What can we do? So, practical application, number one, don't use pesticides, don't use herbicides. Big one. Don't put them into the ground or the air. Don't use chemical fertilizers. Microbes, we don't see them, microbes produce a critical share of oxygen on this planet. Between 60 and 80% of the oxygen we breathe in every day are from microbes. Just one little bacteria produces 20% of the Earth's oxygen. It's not a good idea to kill it. Hello. Pesticides kill bees, got it, butterflies, and it breaks this exquisite chain of reciprocity, which will kill us too. Avoid buying plastic, avoid using plastic. It doesn't recycle. Promise you, less than 10% of the recycled plastic is recycled. The rest goes into landfill. We send it overseas. They don't recycle it either. Eat lower on the food chain. A full fifth, according to the UN, of all greenhouse gas is created by the meat industry. Buy and eat local food. Use energy-saving devices. Buy gas-sipping cars or electric vehicles. And above all, remember that if all this is indeed Brahman, the best spiritual practice for us is to actually act on it. Thank you.
So next we will have Pravrajika Saradeshaprana, who will be speaking about dealing with home and family.
Good morning. It's really nice to be with people again. The topic that I've been chosen to do is home and family. Vedanta teaches that the purpose of life, the very reason for human existence, is to learn to live in experiential awareness of our sacred self within a sacred universe, and to manifest this sacred self in every aspect of our lives. These truths, on which the whole of Vedanta is based, were revealed to the earliest Vedic sages, both men and women, as a result of their intense spiritual practices. But these spiritual practices were not done in some remote Himalayan cave or in an isolated monastery. They were done in the home, by men and women while they took care of the needs of their families. It was in their homes that they practiced meditation and worshipped the Divine Presence in the morning, noon, and evening by making offerings into the sacred fire in the hearth. In time, this sacred hearth evolved into the religious shrine, which is found today in almost every Vedantic or Hindu home. For some people, it may be a picture on a shelf, or for others, they'll have a table. Some people have a cabinet so they can close the doors when there are people that they don't want to share their shrine with. And for others, they're able to give a whole room to their shrine room. But this shrine becomes the spiritual heart of our home. We believe that although the Divine Presence is equally present throughout the whole universe, where it's evoked and worshipped, it becomes specially manifest. It's at our shrine that we sit for our daily meditation. It's here we pray for God's blessings at the beginning of the day and in the evening before we go to bed. We run through a mental inventory of the activities of the day, both the good and the bad, and offer ourselves and everything that we've done back to God. It's here that we develop a very intimate, personal relationship with God. God is our very own. Sri Ramakrishna stresses God isn't something distant or punishing. God is a part of our family. And it's here that we bring and offer all the special requests of our lives, a new job resume, an application for college, our poetry, art, writing, and all our creative efforts, even our new clothes and the special items of our household. This does two things. Firstly, it reinforces that nothing is ours to own. It's given to us by God for our use. And it also helps to reinforce that every aspect of our life is part of our spiritual practice, not just what we do when we're sitting in our shrine. The shrine in the home has many other advantages. Firstly, of course, it's a focus place for our spiritual practice. And when we find after a fairly short time, when we light our incense or take our mala or sit down, just make our seat for meditation, the Pavlov dog's principle takes over, and we find that our minds naturally go into that mood of meditation. The Yoga Sutras teach that our sacred self is obscured by our attachments, our aversions, and our fears. One of our greatest attachments is our home. This is where we've got perhaps our financial things. This is where we've decorated it. This is our place. Having the shrine in the home, though, on a subtle level, gradually encourages the idea that this isn't my home. It's the deity's home, the sacred place where I do my spiritual practice, where I live and serve the deity, my partner, and my family. When I was in India, a little old lady came to ask us, as we were visitors, to have dinner in her home. But she didn't say, would you come to my home? She said, would you come to Holy Mother's home and have dinner? When we're beginning to establish our lives with our partner, planning our home together, making all the decisions that this involves, who's going to cook what night of the week, all of those kind of practical things, our spiritual life and practice should be discussed and consciously made part of these discussions. If we're blessed by having a partner who has a similar practice to your own, you can plan a mutual spiritual routine of meditation and religious study together. But if one partner has a different religious practice, and especially if they don't have any spiritual practice at all, then it's very important to set boundaries of time and space for your own spiritual practice. At this time, too, I would urge you to make one resolve for your relationship, that you'll follow the biblical injunction to never let the sun go down on your wrath. That whatever has happened during the day, however difficult it's been, that you will talk it out and reconcile it with each other before you go to bed. 53 years of group living has taught me that the karmic software in the Lord's computer is absolutely infallible. Are you the type that's always punctual? Then you will probably partnered with one of those people that you attempted to tell, we're leaving at 12 o'clock when you're really leaving at 12:15, and hope that they'll at least be there by 12:20. Are you the type that likes to plan and organize everything in advance? Then you'll probably be partnered with someone who likes to leave everything to the last minute. Are you neat and tidy and dislike clutter? Then you'll probably be paired with someone who doesn't see why you should keep putting things away that you're just going to take out again. I have this philosophy that why do you bother to make a bed? You're just going to sleep in it again the next night. Needless to say, this was not a philosophy shared by my mother. Some of you may be sitting here and thinking, well, no, we don't have compatibility problems, my partner and I. Then all I can say is, wait till the teenagers. The only relationship that is absolutely perfect and eternal is our relationship with God. But Saradeshaprana, after Sri Ramakrishna's death, was heard to say, well, he's easy to serve now, he's a picture, which gives you the impression that even a divine incarnation may not always have been so easy while he was alive. Family life can bring great joy, but it also brings times of great sadness and challenge. When we look back in retrospect, we realize that these were some of the times of our greatest spiritual growth. Not at the time we're going through them, but in retrospect, we very often realize this. When problems do arise in our relationship or family life, we can't just meditate them away. A child is struggling in school, our parents can no longer take care of themselves and needed assisted living, our partner has lost his job. Meditation can bring these issues or the solutions for these issues into awareness. Like most of us, we get our best creative ideas while we're trying to meditate, right? And prayer and holy company can sustain us through these periods. But at these times, we have to make calm and loving decisions and act. When we find ourselves in these circumstances, the first thing is to honestly face them, not to sweep it under the rug or hope that if we ignore them, they'll go away. And sometimes this is very painful, but ruthless honesty with ourselves and circumstances is a very necessary aspect of spiritual practice. The second thing we have to do is to separate fact from opinion. Your partner forgot to bring something that you had asked him, perhaps repeatedly, to do so. The fact is you now don't have what you need. The opinion is he's so forgetful, he's always lazy, and then it can go on and on till you get back, and 10 years ago my mother warned me about this. We separate the fact from the opinion. And then we put aside our ego, this which may be manifesting as anger or impatience or pride or embarrassment, and we seek skilled professional help. I know this is hard for some cultures and some families that don't discuss family problems outside the family. But we need to remember at this time that when we give our lives to spiritual practice, the deity that we worship in our home comes to us in the form of the doctor, the teacher, the psychological counselor, to help with every aspect of our lives. Swami Prabhavananda would often tell us that after he taught someone the basics of meditation, they would very often come back to him in 2 or 3 months and say, you know, Swami, I don't think this works for me. It seems to be really making me a much worse person than I was before I started to meditate. And Swami would just laugh and say, no, it's not that you've undergone some transformation for the worse. It's just you're becoming aware of the things that were always there. In the early stages of spiritual life, one of the swamis that I had a great deal of respect for told me that in the early stages of spiritual life, and in his mind, the early stages were fairly extensive, our spiritual practice is primarily doing psychological house cleaning. Some people have very traumatic experiences in childhood or in the home or family that they grew up in. There was a drug or alcohol abuse was a problem. There was family violence or childhood sexual abuse. These experiences may never have been forgotten, but sometimes we shut them away for our own protection. Meditation can unlock these doors and bring them into conscious awareness. And once again, it's very important that we resolve these issues with skilled help, because otherwise, very often they fester in the form of anger or of shame. And we may find ourselves, despite our feelings, repeating these dysfunctions in our current family life, or sabotaging what could possibly be a very loving relationship. Sometimes family life becomes completely broken. The partner who we loved and thought we were going to spend our life with falls in love with someone else and leaves us. There can be severe problems with substance abuse, or physical battering, or psychological abuse. As human beings, one of the hardest things that we have to accept is that we cannot change somebody else's behavior. We can up the penalties for non-compliance, and we can provide resources for help and give loving encouragement and support. But the actual decision to change has to be made by that person, by each individual. Our bodies and minds are the instruments of our spiritual practice. If our home becomes a place where we're physically injured, or our sense of self is so repeatedly denigrated by negative comments, you're dumb, you're no use, you can't do anything, that we come to the point that we believe these ourselves, and that we feel we're incapable of accomplishing anything. This is so destructive for ourselves, our families, and our spiritual practice that we need to contact domestic violence specialists and get their help and move on. I stress that we need to get that help because, as anyone who's worked in this area knows, this is the most dangerous time for the partner that's leaving. This is the time when very often people get killed. Bringing up children is a great joy and a tremendous privilege. But we don't believe that children come into the world with a blank slate. As with all of us, we come in with our karma and samskaras, the tendencies for both good and bad from our past lives. As parents, it's the responsibility to provide the most positive environment for nurturing their children's good and spiritual tendencies and trying to diminish the negative ones. That's why it's important that in our home we create an atmosphere of peace, of loving kindness, of gratitude rather than constant complaining, of unselfishness, truthfulness, generosity, and service within the home and community. We nurture these values by establishing a spiritual routine with your partner in your home for your family, perhaps encouraging the children to visit the shrine morning and evening. Usually children enjoy doing things like offering incense and flowers, and we encourage this. If they bring home a drawing, we take it in and show the deity in the shrine, and then we put it on the refrigerator. We read, when the children are very little, we read bedtime stories that exemplify these values. As parents, you are also the protectors of your family. From a very early age, we need to teach acceptable and unacceptable touching. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 7 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 18. We need to monitor our children's internet activities, our social media, and as they get older, to set curfews and making sure you know where they are and what they're doing and who their friends are. This sometimes takes the courage to do what's right, even if it makes you unpopular, even if nobody else's parents are doing this. One of the hardest things as spiritual parents in the family is that we have to exemplify the ideals that we are trying to inculcate in our children. Do as I say, but not as I do, doesn't work well in any environment. When we fail, and we will fail, we need to admit it and apologize. The most precious gift you can give to your children is your time and your love. Switch off the phones and cultivate family time together. Have a no phone time in your family and stick to it strictly. I've seen couples out to dinner with each other, and both of them are just looking at their telephones. Have meals together, community service projects. Share your own interests, whether it's camping, sports, concerts. Take an interest in their activities. It's these times which will become some of your children's most precious memories. I think today we're all aware that it is the 20th anniversary of 9/11. One of the things that has always struck me with the plane load that was going to Pennsylvania and crashed, they knew that they were going to die. We didn't hear any reports of people saying, I don't think I'm going to make it, please change my shares from this to this. The reports that we have were all people contacting their families and saying, I love you. This was the legacy that they wanted to leave, the most important legacy that they wanted to leave with their families. I pray that Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother will make your home centers of love, harmony, and joy, and that they will be a blessing to all who live there and all who come in contact with you.
Next, we will have Pravrajika Anantaprana, who will speak about dealing with work and occupational concerns.
Hi. This, putting it into practice, my topic is work, and there were 3 subheadings. I'm going to begin with the ethical considerations, because the original basis for all religions is ethics. We have to first do the right thing. We have to follow the Judeo-Christian 10 Commandments, or the Yoga Sutras Yama and Niyama guidelines, or the Buddhist Eightfold Path, or the 5 Pillars of Islam, or any other of the many, many guidelines from all the different faith traditions. We all learned these things in grade school, and then we spend the rest of our lives trying to live up to them. But this is the spiritual path. We get challenged every moment to do and be our best. We grow up by struggling with our own minds and the choices we have to make. Doing the right thing means following Dharma, sticking to our values. And standing up for our values and overcoming our fears is what we call moral courage. Swamiji told Sharad Chandra Chakravarti, never lose heart. In eating, dressing, or lying down, in singing or playing, in enjoyment or disease, always manifest the highest moral courage. Then only will you attain the grace of Mahashakti, the Divine Mother. Of course, the workplace is not a church. Well, here it's a church, but this is a special case. So then what to do when something dicey arises at work, which it probably will? What if we're asked to do something unusual? We have to pause and think about the request. Whom does it protect? Whom does it benefit? Is it what I'm expected to do? Is what I'm expected to do or say bother my conscience? Can it be done or said in the open? What am I really signing up for? Whole cultures have fallen because good people were afraid to look at these issues. Every day there's an account of someone losing his or her job over these things. And for all the examples that we hear about and read about, There are millions that go unsaid and unspoken, and they're just going on underground. But as spiritual aspirants, we can't do this. We have to show moral courage. Or if we're expected to be untruthful in some way, what to do. Some of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples had some very interesting things to say on these topics. Once Swami Brahmananda said about Mahatma Gandhi, through sheer force of ethical life, he is knocking at the highest door of spirituality. So just following plain ethics can take us very, very far. Swami Vijnanananda had a young devotee ask him, "Maharaj, I'm working under a businessman, and it is impossible to work there without telling lies. I want your advice about it. Will these little falsehoods stand in the way of my realizing God?" Swami Vijnanananda said, "Straying from truth will surely impede realization of God. God is truth, and to realize him, you have to be completely truthful." Another man who was standing by said, "But in business, a little untruthfulness does not matter much." The Swami said, "What a strange thing to say. Your duty is to try to be truthful under all circumstances. But now and then, if you have to utter a falsehood, owing to special reasons, don't worry about it too much, because while you are subordinate to another person, you cannot help obeying him. If you are completely truthful, you will only lose your job. Now go on working as you are doing. Afterwards, when you are more free, you can follow your own inclinations and stick to truth at all times. But know it to be the last word, that to realize God, you have to be wholly truthful in thought, word, and deed." And Swami Turiyananda said, "The world is a dreadful place. Only falsehood reigns here. If a spiritual aspirant gives up truth, he can progress no more. Innocent lies are untruths all the same. It is a tremendous ordeal to abide by truth. A good deal of sacrifice is needed. To keep something secret, saying, 'I won't tell,' is also a kind of untruth. To be absolutely frank and open in one's dealings is real truthfulness." Swami Prabhavananda said that Swami Brahmananda could overlook a person's lust, but could not tolerate untruthfulness. Once a brahmachari got into some trouble. When Maharaj questioned him, he admitted everything. But another disciple made a kind of small mistake. When Maharaj asked him about it, he denied everything. Maharaj tossed him out of the order. He said, Swami Prabhavananda said, "It is impossible to realize the truth without practicing truthfulness. Truth is the essential thing." There's a Harvard professor who also writes for The Atlantic who said that the people most satisfied with their work are the ones who find a match between their own values and the values, especially when the values are moral, philosophical, or spiritual, and the values of their employer. They did a study on nurses in Iran and found that the happiest ones believed their work was, quote, "a divine profession and a tool by which they could gain spiritual pleasure and satisfaction." Swami Premananda says you should find a job that will give you more income. As long as you have to live in the world, you will need money, but earn money by honest means. Never stoop to dishonest means. To be dishonest is the one root cause of all misfortune and suffering. Don't think of the work you do as a task. Try to do it in an unselfish way, not seeking the results. That will break bondage. The self-same medicine will give different results according to the type of ingredients taken with it. Thus, work is in one sense a bondage, yet if it can be done in a detached way, in a spirit of dedication to God, the same work will give you devotion and liberation. He said, those who are steady in secular work are also steady in their spiritual exercises. To work in the right way, you must have a profound regard for your work and at the same time an indifference to its fruits. All disinclination for work can be overcome if it is dedicated to God. So this is about dealing with bosses and coworkers. Whether we have jobs with pay or without pay, we all have coworkers and superiors. Besides just the bare bones of what our jobs entail, there's the environment of our workplace. We have to work with other people and under the observation of our managers. And I don't know about you all, but just introducing any other point of view into my world sets up a challenge. Years ago, I remember Vidyaprana from India said, every individual has had a unique set of experiences, so it follows that every individual has a unique point of view. It helps to remember this often. At the office and also at home, we move with other people and their unique points of view. Swami Saradeshaprana said, a true worker works with skill and efficiency, but at the same time will maintain inner peace and tranquility. However arduous his task may be, he won't grumble. He'll avoid misunderstanding and quarrels and be tolerant of other people's viewpoints. When it comes to dealing with bosses, a teacher friend of mine had to push back against an attempt to influence the voting of faculty at her Catholic school. An administrator put a pamphlet in all the teachers' mailboxes called How Catholics Should Vote. By the end of that day, my friend had written a letter objecting to the attempt and had put it in all the mailboxes and had complained to the principal. The principal was new and tried to argue that the pamphlet had no political party name on it. She maintained that the school had absolutely no business trying to influence their vote. The principal learned his lesson, and nothing like that ever appeared again. And then many faculty members thanked her for speaking up, including the conservative members. They said it made them uncomfortable, but they didn't have the nerve to speak up. This example doesn't involve a serious moral question, but it shows that one should still speak up against unethical practices. Our Vedantic scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita and our teachers like Swamiji set out the ideas and ideals of karma yoga to help us. Our spiritual goal is to perceive the divine everywhere in all states of mind. Regardless of our personal spiritual philosophy, we can use the tenets of karma yoga. The point is to work for the sake of excellence and not for the sake of praise, glory, or big bucks. That Harvard professor said that the studies show that getting a job mainly to make bank will undermine any job satisfaction. The karma yoga method of job satisfaction is to dedicate the work to God or to humanity. If it's to God, one can pause before each activity, or at least before beginning the workday, and offer all our efforts to our chosen deity. Dedicating our efforts undercuts the egoistic feeling of, I am doing this with my own skills and intelligence. As we know, a tiny break in one synapse can bring our skills and intelligence to a screeching halt. So this practice also recognizes reality. Swami Brahmananda says, learn to work for the Lord instead of working for yourself. Know that you are worshiping the Lord through your work. If you can work with this attitude, it will not bind you. On the contrary, it will improve you in every way, physically, mentally, and spiritually. It is easy to do great deeds, the deeds that bring name and fame, but it is by small, everyday actions that a person's character is known. The true karma yogi does not work to gain publicity. No matter how insignificant his work may be, he throws himself wholeheartedly into the task, because for him, his work has become worship of God. Give 3 parts of your mind to God and apply the rest to your work. If you can do this, your work will indeed be worship, and your heart will be filled with joy. Even on a down-to-earth level, throwing ourselves wholeheartedly into our work is the best way to take away its boring aspects. Even cleaning a sink can be fun if we work out a method. Then we can offer at the end of the work or of the day all our struggles and dedicate the work to God. Now the question of right occupation. Any honest occupation is a right occupation. Some occupations entail harm to people or animals, such as operating drone strikes or working in a slaughterhouse. Swami Premananda says, "The scriptures say that if one can attain knowledge through spiritual practices even when engaged in work, then why give up work? Have you not heard of Dharmavyata?" He was the butcher in the Mahabharata who had attained knowledge. Dharmavyata said, "No duty is ugly, no duty is impure, and what determines its worth is the way in which the work is done. I devote all my time to ensure that my customers are satisfied with my service. Furthermore, it allows me to take care of my aged parents as well as my family. It also ensures that I have the ability to live a decent life. Do not judge work as good or bad. No work is of higher or lower stature. It is higher or lower based on the driving force behind that act." One of our Sunday school graduates, whose son is now in Sunday school, had a well-paying job in the biotech industry in sales. She felt she was going through the motions of working without a purpose. After 20 years, she wanted a change. As she put it, that would help me give back to society. I wanted to have a footprint. When I am on my deathbed, I want to look back on my life and know that I made a difference. So she decided to become a teacher, thinking that this was one of the best ways to give back, as she said, quote, "guiding our future citizens to explore, wonder, and make sense of our world through science. I have no doubt that growing up with the Vedanta philosophy influenced my thinking and desire to be part of something greater and fulfill my life's work. I truly enjoy teaching science to our youth. I can't express the joy I feel when a young person's eyes light up and they say, 'Oh, I get it.' I feel as though some part of my job here on earth is done, one inquisitive brain at a time." This again returns to the practice of karma yoga. We have to involve the yoga factor, or we're left with just karma. We don't want to be left with just karma.
So to wrap up our morning session, Pravrajika Vidyaprana will speak about dealing with societal concerns.
Okay, let me start with a couple of questions. Do you think that we all inhabit the same world? I'm going to use world and society interchangeably. Do you think that you inhabit the same world that you did 50 years ago, or even 30 years ago? If you are tempted to say yes automatically, then think again. Each of us has our own individual spin on it, our own perceptual overlay that can become a source of friction with others. When you multiply this by 8 billion people, it's a huge wonder that the so-called world still seems to function. But that functionality has been impaired by a century-long wars and a recent pandemic, which brought the world economy to its knees. Constant change is the nature of the world. Within it, we feel disconnected and needy. In the Hindu conception of the ever-turning cycle of social manifestation, this is the so-called Kali Yuga, the very bottom of the wheel. That is, we are in the age of degradation, where all prior standards of ethical, moral, that is, dharmic living, have been thrown overboard in a rush for the new, the most thrilling, the most outrageous, egoistic acting out by ordinary people. The masses have taken the ascendancy. They trust no one. They revere no one. They're out to get for themselves momentary fame or whatever the current craze is. Whole industries now exist to sow the seeds of doubt and chaos. The glue that sticks society together has all but melted away, and we are in the precarious position of Icarus, who has disobeyed his father, has challenged the very laws of nature, and is now too close to the sun and will plunge to his death at any moment. This Greek story of Icarus is usually used to warn against hubris and overreaching of human capacities beyond our natural limits. But it's just one of many such stories of degradation and destruction. Look at the story of Lot from the Bible. God spoke to Lot and said, you know, you're going to have to leave this city because I'm going to destroy it. And because it's evil, it's become really evil. And Lot said, well, what if I could find 10 good men? And God said, okay, fine, find 10 good men. So he went looking, he couldn't find 10 good men. So then he talked to God again and said, well, what if I just found 5? And God said, okay, fine. And then he couldn't find 5 good men in the whole city. And then he said, okay, well, what about 1? And God said, okay. And Lot could not find 1 good man in the entire city. So guess what? God destroyed the city. In the last century, within memory of our parents and grandparents, look at the chaos of World War II. Now, there was a definite, as far as I'm aware, good versus evil type of situation, but it was chaos. So, but let's go back further. Look at the greatest of all the epic stories, the Mahabharata, which event has been placed somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, although the story, of course, was written much, much later. Even then, the characters in the story were bemoaning the passing of the old ways. Bhishma, the great grandsire of the Kuru clan, could not drop his personal story, which is at the basis of the conflict between the 2 branches of the family in that story. Interestingly, Bhishma's father, Shantanu, during the course of the war, halfway through this great war, is looking down from heaven, and he realizes within himself that he, Advaitically speaking, had done each of the terrible things that had led up to the war. He himself, now how could he? He's up in heaven, right? How is this so? Well, let's look at Swami Vivekananda's poem, No One to Blame. In it, he declares the same truth that Shantanu discovered. I am my own embodied past. There is no other agent. In a letter, Swamiji also writes that while visiting Egypt, he noticed the tourists agape at the Great Pyramids, yet he declares that they built them. We are our own ancestors and descendants. Again, how can this be so? Well, Advaita is the only thing that really tackles the question. The one in manifestation must experience everything. Simultaneously, they say. The sage sees the sweep not only of space, but time. Everything exists in the present for that one. Scientifically, we would say that everything in existence is mapped on every other thing. It is all of a single piece. As Blake declared, the universe in a grain of sand. So for purposes of our discussion today, The real question is, where is the demarcation between self and society? We can either say that we have internalized society or that we have externalized it. Either or both are true. From the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, when the master was at Kasapur, Ramakrishna said to Narendra, now Narendra was a young man, still in college at the time, in a whisper, quote, "When one sees everything filled with God alone, does one see anything else?" And Narendra doesn't quite get it, and he says, "Must one renounce the world?" And the master repeats emphatically, "Didn't I say just now, when one sees everything filled with God, or we could say unity, alone, does one see anything else? Does then one see any such thing as the world?" But here we are, apparently embodied. We are not viewing life from that highest state. So, on our way, I suggest that we pay attention to the system of the layered sheaths of the human makeup and apply what it has to teach us. So in this conception, we have 5 bodies or 5 sheaths: the physical, energetic, mental, intellectual, and joyful. You can conceive of them as like a ladder or as concentric circles, however you want to do it. But the principle or the axiom that I want to bring forth, which you may or may not have heard, is that you can't solve, for example, a physical problem by physical means. You can only solve any problem from at least the next higher level of this spiritual ladder. So, for example, physical problems are solved by applying means from the energetic level at least. Energetic problems from at least the mental level, mental problems from at least the intelligence level, etc. Now, one of our swamis, our early swamis who was in this country, permanently posted to the US, was Swami Paramananda, and he frequently invoked this axiom or this principle, that you have to go to the next higher level to solve something. He applied this principle all the time. So I'm going to quote quite a bit from him here. By the way, he was called Little Swamiji by those who knew both Swami Vivekananda and himself. They viewed him as being like a little twin, in a sense. Quote, "The tendency of materialism is to make us forget. It holds out promises of prosperity, but it cuts at the very root of the tree of life. We must realize that we are born of spirit, and therefore nothing can prevail against us. Because we have lost this higher point of view and drifted away, we feel helpless and ailing. When we go against nature, we create certain results from which we cannot escape. Cosmic law, the fundamental principle of attainment, must always be, seek you first the kingdom of truth, all other things shall be added unto you." Now he is asking this question. Why is it we find this so difficult to follow? Because we do not really believe it. In his book on spiritual healing, he says, when we feel that we are direct descendants of the infinite, when this conviction is firmly established in our hearts, then we are made whole. We have everything. We are the descendants of the infinite, all-beautiful, all-living spirit. The more we can think of we can form the habit of thinking of this, the greater will grow our inward power. Then we can easily cope with all the little things of life. At no moment shall we feel at a loss. We will have so much that it will not only suffice for our own life, but we will be able to share it with others gladly and abundantly." Unquote. Then we feel an overwhelming compassion for the multitude of human beings who are trapped in the webs of their own making and suffer. And we try to extend our assistance in whatever way we can to raise them up. The oneness is not out there. The oneness is you. For practical purposes, if 5 levels of embodiment are too much to deal with, then let's reduce it to one small lesson that recently I read from the Tibetan nun Pema Chodron. She wrote about Shenpa, or the urge, the hook that triggers our habitual tendency to close down. Shenpa is usually translated as attachment, but a more descriptive attachment might be hooked. When Shenpa hooks us, we're likely to get stuck. Shenpa thrives on the underlying insecurity of living in a world that is always changing. We experience this insecurity as a background of slight unease or restlessness. We all want some kind of relief from that unease, so we turn to what we enjoy: food, alcohol, drugs, sex, work, or shopping. But when we empower it with the idea that that thing will bring us comfort, that it will remove our unease, we get hooked. Experientially, something triggers an old pattern we'd rather not feel, and we tighten up and click into our habitual pattern. The business of not acting out is called refraining. Traditionally, it's also called renunciation. We actually renounce and refrain not from the habitual item, but from the Shenpa, the urge, the hook. In the 60s, there was a saying, some of you may remember this, some of you may not: "Stop the world, I want to get off." The only world you can get off of is the one that each of us has created by way of our expectations, likes, dislikes, etc. That one you can definitely get off of. Give yourself permission to drop your personal story and realize that you are not living. You are being lived.
Okay. So we will be taking a quick break until about 11:20 because we went a little bit over. We have snacks and water down at the table below the temple. And please take this opportunity to write down your questions for the Q&A session. So you sit there, and then we have a handheld microphone which you all can pass for when someone wants to answer a question. Vrajaprana, can I hand this to you? Thank you.
We're supposed to take off our masks.
If you are comfortable with that, yes. So we have some written down questions here.
The speakers can keep their masks on, everyone else needs to have their masks on. You can take them off because we have to answer questions. Only we can take ours off. Yeah.
You remember someone said, don't do, the wall was like, do this with.
So the first question we have is, before going to work, I try to pray to God to offer my work for the day. But in the midst of work, I often forget to keep my mind on God and kick myself for it later at the end of the day. Any practical advice to remedy this?
I'm assuming this is for me?
It's for everyone. Oh.
I think the main thing is don't kick yourself, but of course also when you kick yourself, that also is a help, because, Kunti said to Sri Krishna, please give me troubles because I always remember God in the times of troubles. So when you're kicking yourself, you're remembering God and you're reinforcing your earnestness to try to remember God all day long. But I don't think you should worry about forgetting, because you have to keep your mind on what's, the business at hand and get things done properly. You can't, completely remember God under all circumstances when you need your full concentration on what you're doing. I mean, we all, fly off the handle and kick ourselves afterwards. And that's not just forgetting God, but even getting worse than that. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Anybody else?
Instead of the kicking yourself, just remember God again and say, tomorrow maybe I'll do a little bit better. But you don't have to remember God all the time. Sri Ramakrishna said, tie the knowledge of Brahman in the corner of your cloth and go about living your life. You know it. It's there. It's in your awareness. You bring it to the fore at the times when you're not consumed with work or other kinds of things that are important to maintain daily life.
I am obviously a believer in the Pavlov dog principle, that you take certain activities, whether it's going someplace. Thich Nhat Hanh used to say, when the phone rings, you let it ring once or twice and practice mindfulness. Well, if you have a mantra, you can do the same thing with your mantra. Swami Swahananda used to say, at least each hour, to do your mantra just a few times. As they say, you have to keep your mind on your job, but to keep bringing it back this way. There's a story of a Hasidic Jewish saint who would pray each night, "Oh Lord, I'm so sorry I did this. I won't do it again. Oh, I said the same thing last night, but tonight I really mean it." So we're in good company.
I'm a great believer in the end of the day spiritual routine. I mean, right before you turn out the light, you've done some holy reading, you put your mind in a good place, look at all the holy pictures in your room, say good night, and then at the same time remember what you did. We can't always do that because we're so engaged in our activity. It's great if we can remember it. Sometimes we just don't. But when we can, at the end of the day, say, please accept that. Please accept that. Yeah, I screwed that up. No surprise there. Please accept it anyway. But even at the end of the day, I think that really puts our mind in a good place to start the next day.
Stay quiet for long. I think the very fact that you recognize the fact that you haven't thought of God
at work is a big step forward. Because so often before we take up spiritual life, we don't even think about what we're thinking of. And so just the very fact that you say, I try to offer it to the Lord, and then I realize I have forgotten all day long. But you have made the first step. And that step will take you, as they say, you take one step, God will take 100. And all of that will take you forward on your spiritual path.
You can also keep a picture with you, not maybe out in the open, but somewhere under your things on your desk or something, and look at it periodically. And also you could wear a bracelet or something, like a rosary, something that reminds you.
I carry a key fob that says, like what you do what you like. This is what our eldest nun always said. She said, we don't have a choice. You love what you do, and you do what you love. We're living here, we've taken up a spiritual path, and so we love all of the work that comes our way.
Okay, so the next question is, the effect of emotional abuse, parental rejection, apparently have deeper and longer impacts than sexual abuse. I can't read the bottom of the question. Please. Yeah.
You need someone who used to translate Swarm's woman language. Please discuss. Please discuss.
So just.
Could you read it again?
The effects of emotional abuse, parental rejection, apparently have deeper, longer impacts than sexual abuse. Please discuss.
I don't think they necessarily do. I think it depends on the level of both. But they do. Both have effects. And these, I think, have to be dealt with by specialists in those particular areas. I feel very strongly because sometimes people come to spiritual life thinking that they can meditate or pray their way out of problems. That's not what spiritual life or meditation, or that aspect of spiritual life, meditation and prayer is for. If I break my leg, I don't meditate about it. I go and get it set and fixed. If I'm overweight and I'm sitting to meditate, I'm not going to lose weight by sitting on my cushion. And similarly, when people have these very deep traumatic experiences, I do believe that in time that our only real relationship is with God. The Upanishads tell us it's for the sake of the divine within that these people are dear. And I think that it can compensate. But usually it also takes some counseling and some help and some professional help. Want to take this one off?
It's such a painful issue. I have family members, parents actually, both of them dealt with really abusive parents on both sides. And I was so appreciative of my mother, who was able to sort of get out of it and not repeat the process. And also be able to get stronger by forgiving. My father couldn't stop that process. He was stuck in a lot of anger. So I think one thing that I really hate using the concept of karma because it's like, oh, well, it's your karma. Get over it. That's not what I'm saying, because I think therapy is absolutely necessary to work through these really deep, deep wounds. But at some point, rather than thinking of ourselves as victims, which is a weakening position, think that I was put in this situation because this was apparently the only way that I could grow. I was put in this position so maybe I can serve others through learning about this. Maybe I don't want anyone else to go through what I went through. Let me see what I can do to serve other people in this same position so they won't have to suffer this kind of pain. We had a woman who came here who had experienced the most horrific abuse, and she brought 12 other women with her. And I said to her, how did you even go through that? How did you survive? And she said, I couldn't have helped all these women, it was a Catholic group, unless I'd gone through this myself. And she was able to sort of overcome her identity as being one who suffered in a horrific abuse as like, I did this, I'm offering this up, and I'm now going to help other women so they don't have to go through the same thing themselves. So I think one important thing, absolutely one needs to have that kind of skilled professional help, and then sort of see ourselves as more than a victim, but as to rise above the abuser, to realize that that person was suffering themselves in order to do that kind of abuse, never putting up with it, but to sort of see ourselves as kind of like victors over the whole process.
I'd just like to add a small addendum to this, and that is that very often these problems are inherited. They go through families. So when you get the help that you need, when you change this pattern, you are stopping it perhaps for generations to come. Sometimes when we're in this situation, there is the question, why me? This isn't a Vedanta question. We know why. We have earned the circumstances of our lives. But the Vedantic question is, what am I supposed to learn from this? And I'd like to echo Vrajaprana. I too know of many people who have gone through this. They went to Al-Anon, they got early intervention help with educational problems, and they're now leading thriving lives, ironically, both of them of service. So sometimes we learn so effectively from these circumstances, and rather than letting it destroy us.
I just wanted to also to add to what Saradeshaprana said about these things are handed down. People who have suffered abuse often become abusers themselves. And this is just to remember that when we encounter someone who's considered a predator, a sexual predator, or an abuser, to remember that probably 99 times out of 100, they themselves were victims of that abuse. And it just keeps us from judging them too harshly.
Is there anyone else for that line of discussion? No. Okay. The next question is, how to deal with inconvenience versus impact to the external world when the options available for convenient life are numerous. Example, plastics.
What? Plastics. Plastic is so lousy. And it's true. Sometimes you have to really go out of your way to find something that isn't plastic, and plastic is so convenient. And you see that little triangle mark and you think, well, it's recyclable. Do you know, I didn't know until last week that little triangle is a marketing ploy. Anybody can put that sign on anything. It means nothing. It's totally a fake sign. They're trying to pass along, it just came to the legislature a couple of days ago, that if you put on that recycling sign, it means you have to actually recycle it. Because it means nothing. They put it on children's toys. They put it on styrofoam cups. Styrofoam takes 400 years to even begin to disintegrate. It never disintegrates. It's just, we have to really sort of make considered decisions, not just through our pocketbook, not just because they're on sale at Costco, we can buy a whole lot of them, but just to try to do, at least cut down dramatically, and then hopefully our shopping decisions will make the people who produce these things give us better things, because if we as consumers choose those things, they're going to look at their marketing stuff and say, oh, this is selling better. They don't want to buy this stuff. Okay, let's change. They won't change unless we change. That's how capitalism works. Our dollars, our choices, our credit card moves those choices. So when we make those choices, like, no, I want it bottled because glass recycles. No, aluminum foil recycles. Plastic, sometimes it's very, what are you going to do apart from using a baggie? Use the baggie again and again and again and again. We have a whole tree, a whole bush outside the convent that looks like our plastic bag growing tree. That's where we take our wet plastic bags and we stick them out there to dry and we use them again, rather than just unthinkingly just grab and use those garbage cans, put them down, use it again. To just like, if the manufacturer notices, everyone will notice. Any other?
Just here.
Okay. So the next question is, what is the strategy for attracting young nuns to the order?
That's for you.
Well, I don't know if you all noticed, but we've been having more classes and we're more present. That's the main strategy we have here right now. Anyone else?
We're here right now, right? There's no strategy. There's no strategy for telling people to lead a life of no, you don't get to date. No, you don't get to earn money. No, we really do mean by dating you can't have relationships either. Your relationship is with our community and with the divine within us, within the worship of God. You can't market that. But you can market the fact that the ideal of human life is to realize that divinity with us and to serve others and to recognize that divinity in others. Now, if people if there is a call within their own hearts that speaks to me, that's what I want to do with my life, we'll just keep doing our thing and people will come, because that's the way karma works. That's the way desire works. If there's, just like with our finding a spiritual teacher, if anyone desires to have a spiritual teacher, that desire will bring them to a spiritual teacher. If anyone wants to have their life dedicated to finding God in their hearts and to serving that divinity in others, they will find their way to a monastic life, if that's what they really want. Any takers? Papa? So you'll sit here with that.
As Vrajaprana says, we have no strategy. Although I think one of the things that makes it more palatable is to be happy in our lives and express that joy in our lives. And it's not something we can make up or pretend to have. But spiritual life is not dreary and it's not drudgery. It is heading towards real joy. And so, I remember when I first encountered Swami Prabhavananda, one of the things that struck me was, he could look, as he said, his face when it was in repose looked like the gloomiest thing in the world. And you'd go in and you'd say, Swami, are you mad? No, that's just my face. But as soon as he opened his eyes, there was nothing but pure joy and love. And it was not a lifestyle that, renunciation. Yeah, we were not renouncing. We were simply going for something more. We were going for something better, something that would make us happier. And I think it helps to even know that and let people know that it's not renunciation. It is going for the gold. That's what it is. That's what spiritual life is.
Unlike Catholic monastic life, where one feels the call and whether one accedes to it or doesn't becomes the issue, in Hinduism, monastic life is more like the fruit that ripens from the tree and falls off. And my experience has been that if this is what's meant for you, you really can't understand why anybody would do anything else. And if it's not meant for you, you can't understand why on earth anyone would even do it.
Swami Prabhavananda would say, renunciation, he said, it's like trading in a Ford for a Cadillac. You know, you're getting something so much better, but it's so true. There have been people who move in and they feel trapped. And personally, if I'm out there too long, it's like, when I come back on the property, it's like, oh, thank God I'm back here. It's exhausting being out there. So it's like, if you're meant to be here, you'll be here. If you're not meant to be here, even if you come here, your own nature will force you out.
So the last question that we have written down is, can you speak to the unique or singular experience of being a woman leading a spiritual life? What wisdom or knowledge, if any, is special to the experience of being a woman leading a spiritual life?
I'm afraid I'm the most senior, so I have this horrible feeling that this is going. I should start the ball rolling. What's the question again?
The unique experience of being a woman in a spiritual life. You mean monastic or just spiritual?
It says spiritual life. What wisdom or knowledge, if any, is special to the experience of being a woman leading a spiritual life?
I really don't think that when it comes to spiritual life, gender is an issue. I think that when we come to spiritual life, having said that we bring everything that we have. The purpose of spiritual life is to transmute everything that we have into an aspect of our spiritual life. Every woman is different. Every woman has different talents, different traits. And so each person is going to bring those things to their spiritual life. And I don't think whether one is a woman or a man, it really makes that much difference. I mean, we've had women who are, really able to do construction and all that kind of thing. And I know when I first came into the bookshop, they put all the people in the bookshop who couldn't do construction. And they couldn't even put together the insides, one of the men, they couldn't even put together the insides of a filing cabinet. So I think that each one of us has, in a sense, an individual path. And I think each one of us brings whatever our positive and unfortunately negative tendencies are and tries to transmute these and to live a spiritual life. But I don't think gender is one of the major issues. Perhaps, I suppose one could argue that, well, there's a more motherly quality and this kind of thing. But then I've met monks that are very nurturing and very motherly too. So I don't think gender's an issue.
I'll agree with that, but I think there is, from the point of view of the those outside the monastic community a perception, and that women like to gravitate toward women for certain things, to talk about problems or spiritual life or whatever. I think that's a very natural kind of a thing. I mean, traditionally all over the world, women have been of the, shall we say, circular mentality. You know, we work more on an equals basis, whereas men are more hierarchical. That's just kind of, I think, sort of built into the mentality, and I think women tend to gravitate toward. They'll even outright say sometimes, you know, I can't talk to the Swami about this, whatever this is. You know, I just don't feel comfortable enough, or whatever. And in that sense, I think that we can fulfill a role very much for others. But innately, you know, I don't think that there's that big of a difference. Also because our mental makeup can be can be classified. I mean, Ramakrishna himself used to do that. He would say, such and such a male devotee has a very feminine nature, or one has a very heroic nature or masculine nature or whatever. But the same thing could be said about the women. Gorima had a sort of a more masculine nature. You know, that has to do with our mental makeup. So that remains as it is. But the perception or the social acceptance or role or expectation, perhaps, of others, I think we serve a purpose, you know, and sometimes for men too, but for a lot of other women who open up more easily to talk to another woman than they would to a monk, let's say. I mean, a monk is a renouncer, right? So certain things you can't talk to them about, people feel.
I think that the motherhood thing is very important, I remember one of our vice presidents said to me, every monk must become a mother. And I never thought that I would feel this way, but I find myself more and more feeling that way toward people, you know, and I think that the motherhood of God, that loving, nurturing kind of motherhood, is very important. And I think men also have that. Sri Ramakrishna himself was considered to have a female nature, you know, the Divine Mother. And I think it is probably more manifest in women, and therefore women, I agree with Vidyaprana. Often people will say, I can ask you things that I can't ask them.
No one else? So it looks like we have about 4 minutes left, so it might be a good time to end questions and answers before meditation. So we have meditation at noon, a meditation and a worship, and then at 12:45 we have our lunch break, and we're coming back for the second session at 1:30.
And everyone, since we have so many people in person, come down to the big picnic table by the art room, and we can eat lunch together and talk. Okay?
Thank you.